Welcome back into HQ Spotlight. All the talk's really been about the rookie quarterbacks, like the guys that went 1, 2, 3 in the draft. But do not forget about pick number 4, the first non-quarterback taken, Marvin Harrison Jr. by the Cardinals. The former Buckeye will begin his NFL career a little over 2 weeks in Buffalo. You can watch that game on CBS. Now, Harrison Jr. has been well discussed in the fantasy football community. Fantasy Football Today is slotting him in as wide receiver 8 behind guys like the aforementioned Jamar Chase, that we talked about earlier in the show, A.J. Brown. He is going ahead of Puka Nacua and fellow Ohio State wide receiver Chris Olave. For more on these rookie receivers, let's hand it off to Fantasy Football Today experts Jamie and Heath.
Thank you. I think it's fun to see, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's this year's hot rookie, going behind Puka Nacua, who was last year's dominant rookie, but it wasn't being drafted that way because Nacua really was a big surprise. So, Heath, let's talk about, Marvin and where to draft him, because a lot of people look at it and say, he hasn't done anything yet. Why am I taking him over Devontae Adams, for example, or Mike Evans, or some of these other receivers that clearly have a very lengthy resume? Harrison's yet to catch pass in the NFL.
Well, I think part of it's how lengthy those resumes are. And in fact, those guys are over 30 years old. But I actually like him one spot ahead of Puka Nacua. He's my number 8 wide receiver. Early to mid round 2 is where you look for this guy. And I hate to say this about a rookie wide receiver, but there's not anything that he could do this year that would surprise me. If he comes out and earns 10 targets per game, I won't be surprised. If he finishes at a top 3 or 4 wide receiver amongst all wide receivers, I will not be surprised. He can win at all 3 levels of the defense. He can definitely take the top off of the defense. He's going to be spectacular.
And we've seen Kyler Murray have great success with a number 1 guy. Now, this is going to be an interesting offense because you have Trey McBride, who we both like. You certainly have him as a little bit higher than me as number 1 tight end. I have Nacua over Harrison simply because I expect Nacua to be healthy. I don't know if it's a health thing for you or not with the knee injury. But those guys are going to go basically back-to-back with, that's where kind of the drop-off is for the consensus rankings, because once we get past Harrison, Nacua, that group, it's Drake London for me. I think it's Mike Evans for you, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of different ways fantasy managers can go, but I agree with you. Harrison in the middle of round 2 makes sense. Malik Nabers, we're going to disagree on. So he's going to be the number 2 rookie receiver drafted based on average draft position, and I think he's your number 2 rookie receiver still. But I have him in the round 3 range. You have him in the round 6 range. Why?
And it has, well, first off, why not? It has nothing to do with Malik Nabers. I think he's awesome. He was one of the best wide receiver prospects of the last 3 years. He's playing for the New York Giants, and his quarterback is Daniel Jones. I don't think this will be a high pass volume offense. I don't think this will be an accurate pass offense. And so I just don't want to take that type of risk of spending a 3rd round pick on a wide receiver catching passes from Daniel Jones in an offense that really has been right around 500 pass attempts the past 2 years since Brian Daboll got there. Even a 1/3 of 500 pass attempts doesn't get you the type of target shares that I'm expecting from Marvin Harrison.
Now, I expect we're going to see more pass volume in this offense because of this guy. And I think that's the difference, is that Daniel Jones, Brian Daboll, they haven't had this type of player. And I do think we're going to see 130-plus targets from Malik Nabers because they don't really have much else. I don't think the run game is going to be very successful with the Giants with Saquon Barkley gone. I do think we're going to have to see Daniel Jones have to do more than he's ever done before. And it is, we've had this conversation. If Jones was healthy coming off the 2022 campaign, will we feel a little bit better about him across the board? Probably so, but he's not. He's coming off an ACL tear, and we need to see a little bit more out of Malik Nabers. So I don't know if I'm on the high end of the spectrum. Dave and I are. You're probably on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of where we've seen him go. But probably the sweet spot for him is that round 4, round 5 range, depending on how many receivers come off the board. Because 36 at receiver for you could still be a round 4 pick based on how people push up wide receivers. But as you said, I have best ball brain, so wide receivers come off the board a little bit sooner than that. There's not a real consensus number 3 rookie wide receiver. So once you get past Harrison, you get past Nabers, there's that group of guys, as we'll show you here, of Xavier Worthy, McConkey, Keon Coleman, Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr. There's probably some other guys you could throw in there, Jalen Polk, some other receivers, that fantasy managers looking at and saying, okay, these rookies can all be successful. The number 3 rookie wide receiver for you is who?
I go back and forth between the top guy in this list and the bottom guy in this list. And right now, for me, it's Brian Thomas Jr. Had a fantastic last couple of weeks at camp. I just saw a tweet today from our friend Jacob Gibbs talking about how last year Calvin Ridley had the 10th most expected fantasy points based on his role. That's the role I think Brian Thomas plays in this offense. He's outstanding going down the field. Trevor Lawrence was outstanding throwing deep last year. It was just a lot of drops and pass interference penalties.
So I'm going to agree with you in our rankings. I'm going to disagree with you here. I'm going to take Odunze over Brian Thomas just to get another talking point in here on somebody else. I love what he's done the last couple of preseason games. I love that Caleb Williams is looking for him. I love the fact that Keenan Allen, who we expected to slow down, is slowing down. I don't love it for Allen, but I love it for Odunze. And I think we'll see Odunze be the number 2 receiver in Chicago behind DJ Moore. Make sure you check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast, wherever podcasts are found. We're talking more about rookie wide receivers. We're talking about every position because drafts are happening, and we have you covered. We are live 5 days a week. Check it out wherever podcasts are available. You can also find us on YouTube, the best podcast in the business, Fantasy Football Today.